Multiracial white supremacy. Before it became popular. That's the phrase they're saying now. Multiracial white supremacy. Amazing. I'm just gonna Google this phrase right now. What do we get here? Young men of color are joining white supremacist groups. Bro, they're leading the groups now. What do you say about that? Nothing? Nothing. I'm just like, what? What is this? What website is this? NPR. Understanding multiracial whiteness and Trump supporters.
The chairman of the hate group, the Proud Boys, identifies as Afro-Cuban. One of the organizers of the pro-Trump extremist group Stop the Steal is Black and Arab. Cristina Beltran is a professor of social and cultural analysis at New York University, and she uses the term multiracial whiteness to explain why some groups who are disdained by white supremacists embrace white power movements. And she joins us now to explain. Welcome to the...
Maybe those movements aren't white power. Maybe they're not fucking white power movements. Unless, of course, you define what those groups stand for as white power movements. Like being for America first is a white power issue, brand. I don't know what the right word is for that. Amazing.
Grim.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
So what do you mean by multiracial whiteness?
So there's been a whole lot of people thinking and theorizing about white supremacy. And all of these scholars share a view that I share, that whiteness is not the same thing as white people, and that whiteness is actually better understood as a political project that has emerged historically and that is dynamic and that is always changing. And so whiteness...
So hold on. Whiteness is better understood. No. So whiteness is not the same thing as white people. Then why the fuck do you have to say whiteness? Why do you have to say whiteness then? Why not just say Americanness? Or patriotism? I don't know, something else. Why do you have to fucking say whiteness? Because you're fucking racist, that's why. God damn, I hate these people so fucking much. Why can't they just stop this? These people are ruining our country, and they're profiting off it. Literal scum. Fucking leeches. Yeah, I was like, we're giving scum too much credit here. Scum's like kind of like a plankton-based material, and it's kind of like life forms. It's generating, photosynthesis and shit.
As an ideology is rooted in America's history of white supremacy, right, which has to do with the legacy of slavery or...
Whiteness as an ideology is rooted. I don't know what the fuck rooted means, and those are weasel words there. Rooted probably means what? Has the same roots? Listen, whiteness comes from white people. So does white supremacy. See? So they're both bad. Oh, why thank you.
Or Jim Crow. And I think it's important to realize just how long in this country legal discrimination was not simply culturally acceptable, but legally authorized.
Okay, we get it. Discrimination happened.
Practicing a more consistent form of legal equality for a relatively short time since the 1960s. So Americans have often learned how to create their own sense of belonging through violence and through the exclusion of certain groups and populations.
So what you're saying is...
that's a bad phrase right there. Is that somebody who had cognitive dissonance and wasn't listening, and this person also wasn't saying anything. I think it's important to realize how long in this country legal discrimination was not simply culturally acceptable, but also legally authorized. Okay, well guess what? It's not anymore. That doesn't matter. You're trying to say historically. Well, it doesn't fucking matter. How many years in the past has it be? 1,000 years in the future, you're going to be like, well, I think it's important to realize that our country was founded on racism and that those roots are bedded deep in our culture and we can never really remove it. So what? Now, you can't change history. That's why these people keep bringing it up. See, historically oppressed groups, well, then they will always be historically oppressed groups because you can't change history. It's amazing the linguistic warfare they're engaging on us. Is whiteness just code for Western values? Yes. Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. Like, can't they just openly state their hatred for the Western civilization yet? Oh, they can't because that's unpalatable. That's really unpalatable. But they're getting there because they made it really distasteful to be a nationalist. And that's why these people are like, oh, fascism is super nationalistic. It's all nationalism. And they make nationalism seem like a dirty word. Well, what's the opposite of nationalism? Globalism? So that's the only alternative? If you don't love your country, you have to love all the other countries?
Essentially, the people of other races and ethnicities want to benefit from white privilege by supporting it.
Right.
So we should note that you wrote an op-ed recently in...
Whoa, here. Here. So you're saying, essentially, people of other races, other ethnicities, want to benefit from white privilege by supporting it. They want to benefit from white privilege by supporting it. Benefit from white privilege. How do black people benefit from white privilege by supporting it? I thought it was only a bad thing to black people. Maybe I'm just really out of the loop. I guess there's some benefits to white privilege, according to Garcia Navarro here, a probably a racist. We should also note that you wrote an op-ed in Washington Post about this, and it stirred up heated debate on social media. Ha 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 ha. Yes. I'll keep playing this.
In the Washington Post about this, and it stirred up a heated debate on social media. Yeah. I want to read what you wrote in part. For voters who see the very act of acknowledging one's racial identity as itself racist, the politics of multiracial whiteness reinforces their desired approach to colorblind individualism.
Yeah, you are a racist for calling out people by race. The politics of multiracial whiteness reinforces their desired approach to colorblind individualism. All right, let's hear how this is racist, okay? Why is it bad to try to not look at people's skin color?
Blind individualism. Can you explain what you mean?
Sure. I think that one of the things that's interesting about the politics of multicultural conservatism, for example, is that multicultural conservatism, which is the kind of conservative politics of reaching out to other racial minorities practiced by folks like
the John Taylor Republican Society. You guys join it. We're gonna get some merch. We're gonna become a rhino hunter. Link down below.
Practiced by folks like Jack Kemp or George W. Bush, was an effort to recognize the specific histories and backgrounds of particular racial populations and to say that they could be part of the GOP. And I think that one of the things that's interesting is that there's a segment of people of color who don't necessarily want to be recognized at all. They don't want to be recognized for their racial distinctiveness, right? That for them, the very act of sort of identifying them as Latino, as African American, that they themselves have a certain discomfort with that very logic. They want to be
the logic. They don't want to be called up by the race, but you fucking racists won't stop it. Stop it. They feel uncomfortable with it, but you keep doing it.
Logic. They want to be understood as simply Americans outside of those kinds of identity categories.
And surely you can't be saying that every person who doesn't want to be all in with identity politics is somehow supporting white supremacy.
No, not at all. And I think this is one of the things that was sort of interesting about the difficulty sometimes in trying.
It's hard though, because those groups are so closely correlated. Because that's what I am saying. I am saying if you don't like identity politics, you do support white supremacy.
In trying to kind of explain what whiteness is as an ideology, people vote for candidates for all kinds of reasons. But certainly there is, I think, a certain kind of critique of identity politics that actually makes the fact of not doing identity politics very attractive to a certain kind of conservative.
I mean, that is the argument among some conservatives, many conservatives actually, that identity politics.
That you guys are racist and it's divisive. And we're starting to win the cultural war because you guys are being called out for your blatant racism.
Identity politics is divisive. That ultimately what it does is it segments the population according to their various identities and is actually not unifying. And this is a country that is indeed very divided.
Yeah, and I think
those people are bigots.
I think that one of the big political divides we face right now is people who find the very act of talking about those histories of racial exclusion as divisive because the act of
Hold on. One of the big problems in our country is people who think being racist is a problem. I mean, what else did she just say right there? One of the big political divides we face right now is people who find the act of talking about historical racial exclusion as devices. No. No, it's not the act of talking about it. It's you guys bringing it up as justification for present-day racism. That's what we don't like.
Talking about it and acknowledging it produces a kind of defensiveness or anger at even discussing it. The idea that unity should be practiced from sort of not engaging with our history, not sort of celebrating the best stuff and not really acknowledging that we have a complicated, beautiful,
how about we just focus forward instead of looking backwards?
Tragic, inspiring inheritance that we have to understand.
We do understand it, you fucking dumbass. We do understand our history. It's not changing. It hasn't fucking changed. It's history. That's the point. You can't fucking rewrite it.
Go forward.
Why do you think...
As much as they try to want to, and you know what? They might actually succeed. That's why, guys. That's why I bought some 1991 World Book encyclopedias. Like 23 volumes. And you know what? They can't ever change that. They can't change the text on those pages. Wikipedia articles may come and go, and they'll be edited and deleted. But they can't... Donald Trump is mentioned in those World's Book encyclopedias as a developer in New York City. You know what? And they can't ever change that.
At our current politics through this lens would help the deep divisions of our current moment.
What I actually find helpful about theorizing and talking about whiteness as understanding that the politics of whiteness is distinct from white people is I think it actually opens up and expands our political possibilities going forward.
What does that mean? What do you mean expand? Listen, guys, being racist expands our political possibilities going forward. Have you guys ever heard of apartheid? Do you know what measures they enacted after apartheid? Ooh, rip South Africa.
Because we're not actually trapped in our identities or our demographics. It means that white citizens can't...
We are trapped in our identities, except for the fucking how you want to label black people who support Trump as multiracial whites, because they can't just be black Trump supporters. They have to be black white Trump supporters somehow.
Can, and many are, rejecting the politics of whiteness and working with communities of color to forge a multiracial democracy. But we have to understand this complicated and tragic and also beautiful shared inheritance we have. If we want to build something new together, we have to understand where we've...
This entire thing was saying understanding? What? I thought you were going to explain it to us. But now you're just saying that we have to understand it. I don't understand it more now. You didn't explain it to me. You just told me to go understand it. I was hoping you would help me understand it, but you didn't fucking do shit. Christina Beltran, professor of social media and culture analysis at New York University, fucking useless dumbass. Don't buy her book, Cruelty as Citizenship, How Migrants Suffer Sustaining White Democracy. How migrant suffering sustains white democracy. Oh, you just really want to... You're trying to profit off of migrant suffering on the border. There are legitimate people trying to better their lives, breaking federal laws to cross the border for a better life. And you want to make a book and profit off of it. You're one of the white people profiting off of the migrant crisis. Amazing. But hey, what would I expect from a fucking one of them?